Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Alright, so go grab your sketchbooks. What we're going to be doing today is pretty old school. I got some printer paper here and I'm just sketching with a ballpoint pen, specifically the Bic round stick. And we're just going to go to town here and scribble in some kind of creature and let's see what happens. One of the coolest things about drawing with a pen is that if you have a fear of messing up, this kind of forces you to abandon that fear and just draw. The whole point of my channel is to teach people how to embrace scribbling, because a lot of times we get caught up in our heads about details, about making things as perfect as possible. That's not the point of drawing and releasing that anxiety and just enjoying the process. The other thing about sketching that makes people kind of fear it, especially if you're an artist but you gave up the pursuit of it a long time ago, is that it needs to be perfect right out of the gate. Otherwise, you're going to fail at it. And I'm here to say there's no failure, especially for the early stages. It's not about knowing how to shade. It's not about doing everything perfectly. What it's about is embracing the idea that you have to get ideas out on the paper and enjoy that process without overthinking it. Because I think a lot of times overthinking it is what makes people quit drawing. Alright, if you're drawing along with me, just make sure that your hand is relaxed when you're putting in all these pen strokes. You can see here that I'm slowly but surely adding smaller, lighter touches to the skin with the pen. I'm not jumping into stuff too dark unless I am really confident that the line that I'm placing down is going to be there permanently and I won't have anything to say about it, really. Like, I'm happy with it. So for example, I knew that inside of this mouth crease where the membrane is located, I was pretty happy with that right out of the gate. And that happens sometimes. And if you're happy with it, just go with it. I probably have not mentioned this in all of my other videos. If you're, worried about coming up with ideas, if you're worried about it looking cool for others, looking cool for yourself, it could also be that you're expecting too much out of yourself too early on. I guess a better way to word that would be, yes, you are striving for perfection when it comes to drawing, but you're not allowing yourself to just place lines down on the paper and let it build up. Some of the best artwork that you're ever going to do is artwork that you didn't do in one sitting. You actually took maybe a day, maybe 2 days. I mean, there are some sketches that I've had where they were kind of put on the back burner for over a year. I would start off with a drawing. This one might end up like that. I don't know. I might just draw 3/4 of it for this video, and then I'll keep this piece of paper and then come back. I mean, this is printer paper. This isn't anything special. It's printer paper that I got at CVS. Okay, and this is just a standard Bic ballpoint. All right, so I'm just placing in some very light lines near the eye. You can see that I'm slowly starting to build up the bony landmarks and the facial structure. Like back here is going to be a pretty big upper jaw muscle. You can't really see the creature's cranium because it's turned in a front 3/4 view, but I like putting details around the eyes first. That's usually the first place I'll put details around, most of the time. You can see that I did outline some of the teeth, so that is a little bit more detailed. Look where the focus is. It's right up in this eyeball region. I'm thinking about all of the muscles that could be existing right around that eye. And I feel a question coming on, so I'm going to answer it. No, I am not looking at reference right now. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just having fun seeing where lines happen. Now, I will say knowledge of anatomy is taking effect right here. But at the same time, it kind of isn't. What I'm doing is I'm just thinking about an overall skull structure, both the top jaw and the bottom. Now, all of these wrinkles that I'm putting in, these are made up. But I have to make it believable in a sense that, well, if this head is cocked downward like that, then it's going to bend the skin around here. So you're pretty much in the clear as far as making up wrinkles, as long as it's, showing that the skin is bending, creasing. There's crevices in there. You can see that the ones that I'm happy with, I'm actually just putting in some darker lines. And you can see that the touch that I have with this pen is very, very light. It's very light. But it builds up and it adds up. It really does, because this part of the face, from where you guys are watching this right now, it's probably looking a little cloudy inside here. And that's a good thing. That cloudiness that the pen is giving off, or all the texture, it usually equals what would happen if you were to just shade very lightly with a pencil. But since I have a pen, that's how I'm going to be placing values in. And I'm also thinking about the teeth, what I want to be darker, what I want to be lighter. Now, am I happy with this eyeball? Not quite. There's still some areas in here where I know I'll want to get some more detail. For the most part, I really enjoy putting in the age, the wisdom, the wrinkles, and just telling a story around these eyeballs. I know I'm only drawing one eye, but these eyeballs as in for creatures that I draw. Now sometimes my hand, you guys got to be careful with this. With a pen, it's a little different, because the stroke is so fine and thin. It's not like a pencil. So you got to be careful about how hard to press down with this pen. Sometimes I just like to brush across the entire drawing. Just very light. Yeah, this place is getting filled in pretty well around here. And what that's doing is it's giving me an opportunity to get a little darker and put some wrinkles on top of that area with value. Another thing that I can do, and I don't suggest this unless you know for a fact about a certain area, and that is press as hard as you can, or as dark as you can with a pen. If there's a pure black area where you know there's a hole or some kind of place where there's no light. Now that's the creature's throat. You can kind of see the hole of the throat here. I have to be careful though, and that any shading that I do away from that hole still has to be pretty dark within that mouth. So I'm going to turn my paper just a little bit so I can comfortably place my hand right by that hole. And I'm going to very slowly move upwards away from that hole into the inside of the mouth, but still keeping around the teeth. Because remember, these markings with the pen, once they go down, they are down. All right, so what it's doing is it's just putting in some value in the upper inside palette right there. And any values that are lost, any line work that's lost, I'll just take my pen and I'll outline a little darker. For example, I shaded around here, so the outline of the tongue going in the back is probably going to be lost a little bit, and also some of these teeth. I don't want to get crazy with the teeth though. And here's the tongue. So I got to be very careful shading in between each tooth. And I'm just going to use the technique of feathering out the lines for my pen, because I don't want to get too crazy with that. Okay, and you got to show some tension within that the membrane being stretched there. So again, if you're drawing along with me, set your sketchbook up and walk away from it for a little bit, maybe 10 to 15 feet away. And the reason you do this is because you kind of give yourself a different perspective on your own drawing, especially if you don't have somebody there to critique it or to review it with you. It's usually the equivalent of flipping the canvas in Photoshop so that you can view your painting or your sketch opposite view. So if you take a step back from your drawing, you get to shrink the image in your line of sight, and it'll usually tell you if something's working or not, if you have a strong silhouette. I haven't even tested it. I don't know if I have a good silhouette here. I believe I do, just because of the curve of this gigantic mouth. Like if I saw this thing in side view, I would know at least it's distinguishable. So I'm using most of the metal tip for the pen and not the actual ink. And what it's doing is it's giving me very faint shading right there. Very faint. This area is looking pretty good. All right, cool. So we need to figure out what we're going to do. By the looks of it, I think this creature is just going to kind of slug around and not be very docile, not be very athletic or anything. So instead, maybe it just has two limbs and two limbs only. I'm just going to brush across the ground. Okay, and then maybe this is the left limb in the front. I don't want it to be insectoid. Instead, it's going to bend very awkwardly on purpose though. Okay, there we go. And then I need to figure out what I want for, I guess you can call them the hands. Probably just 2 claws. Okay, so I want to explain why the claws are going to the side. Remember in previous episodes where I've talked about weight distribution. So weight distribution and overall movement. All right, if this creature is taking its hand and pushing downwards but off to the side, then the hand is probably going to move with it. So you want to show that there's weight being pushed down right there. I mean, this is an organic creature. Think about, I've given this before. Think about your pinky toe. Okay, you're walking around barefoot, and just watch your pinky toe bend inward towards your foot when you apply weight to it. Okay, so you need to think about limbs and feet and all that stuff doing the same thing for creatures you design. That's why a lot of them look so stiff. So you want to make sure that they're bending. Now this is an important part. It's an important detail just because I don't want to neglect hand design. But also we need to figure out what the joints are doing around this area also. Okay, next up, we are going to take this shoulder joint and this entire arm, and we're going to bring it over to this side so you can see that I've tilted the page a little bit. The way I'm sitting versus the way my camera is filming, you know, if I turn it this way, it's completely straight for you guys, so I know it's a little bit more convenient. But just for the sake of me being able to turn my body and seeing things straight on for perspective purposes, I hope that this isn't too detrimental to you guys seeing this. All right, I'm going to try to keep my hand out of the way also. But what I'm doing is I'm just seeing the angle in which this hand is bending, or this arm. So then I'll just duplicate that. So let's make sure that I get all the body parts in here. Okay, we got our deltoid right here. All right, and then we got the elbow coming up. So it's going to be foreshortened a little bit, obviously, because it's going into perspective that way. The other thing, if you're drawing a creature right now with limbs growing out and touching the ground, think about the anchor points, you know, where and how the creature needs to press against the ground and how that would make the shoulders bend. Think about the way your arm needs to bend if you're doing a push-up, how the elbow needs to flare outwards from the body and your hand needs to go straight forward past your head. Okay, so let's imagine, for example, what this creature would need to do with its hands if it had to, or if it had limbs growing out from the side like it's doing, and then it has to scoot its big fat body along front ways, you know, coming at us. How would that need to happen? This is why it's crucial that you point the toes and the fingertips in the correct direction. Again, if this is confusing you at any point, please know that the way your hands and toes for a creature are going to bend, there's an infinite number of possibilities. So if you look at this hand right here, the way that the big claw and this claw are facing to our right, but this one's kind of going down, there really is an endless amount of directions that those hands could be placed. Okay, now if most of the weight is in this front portion of the hand, then these claws are going to be pushed to the side in the front of the hand. That's why they're all going to our right, except for that one down here. You just want to add a little bit of believability to this, a little bit of realism. Maybe this claw on our far right helps counter that weight so it can push it along. See how I'm just kind of traveling over here with these different sections? This is what happens when I get the creature pretty fleshed out in certain areas. I just get ideas and I can't stop. People have asked me, you know, how long have you worked on drawings before and how long does it take? And usually when it comes to a full-blown illustration, which one is coming, by the way, I've been mentioning that the past couple weeks. I will be filming a full 5-hour drawing. 5-hour plus. Yes, plus. I'm just estimating what that could be, but I'm not really sure yet. You know, I just realized something I haven't really taken into account for this. Its bottom jaw, you know, it's laying flush with this plump belly. I'm probably just going to have to finish this jaw out because it's bothering me. Every time I draw those feet, I'm looking back at this jaw and I'm going, there's no way. So what happens is this bottom jaw, imagine if you guys were sitting and you try to press your chin against your chest. Like if you look downward, that's what's happening here, only that's how it walks. So imagine how hard that would be, and I got to make sure that I get the proper wrinkles placed in there, the teeth. One thing I try to do with the teeth is not be too symmetrical. I do want to be orderly. I want to make it seem like it's organized chaos, but at the same time, add some interest so everything's not perfectly symmetrical. This ties into why a lot of designs look stiff and everything in portfolios, both for characters and creatures. You know, hands and feet are facing the same way. Oh, you know, it'd be kind of funny. I just had this idea. What if we put little arms in the front and they're just kind of bending down like this? Oh, this brings me a Total Recall vibes. Arnold Schwarzenegger version, Total Recall. Here I am talking about movies again during my lessons. I'm probably just going to mention movies, and you know, last one I mentioned growing up in the 80s, watching Critters and Ghoulies, because the 80s was the best decade ever for horror. I don't know about sci-fi though. I mean, maybe sci-fi, but it was good. It started, you know, with Westworld. I think that was 70s actually, and then, you know, you got Alien 1989 or 79, and then of course The Thing, which is sci-fi horror. A lot of people argue about what that actually is for genre sake. Comment below what you think The Thing is. Is it pure horror? Is it sci-fi horror? I think we can pretty much rule out it being pure sci-fi. It's not hard sci-fi. It's not soft sci-fi. You know, like with George Clooney's Solaris movie. Very underrated gem. Came out, I believe, 2007. So slowly but surely, I'm just piecing together the face. And it looks like I am going to be putting no teeth at the front of this beak, but I'm probably going to change my mind. You know what? Why don't we do something pretty crazy? How about 2 sharp teeth that grow on the opposite sides of that bottom beak? Ooh, gnarly. You know what I have to do then? I got to put some canines up there, if you want to call them canines. Trying to honor the perspective too. Okay, and then I'm just kind of brushing up some markings. This is what I mean, folks, when you draw and then you just see areas instantly and you want to jump back to the other area because one area gave you an idea. As I was doing these small hands right here, I kept looking at the mouth, wanted to finish the bottom of the jaw. I'm like, oh man. So you do still get finished with these drawings. The only thing is, it might take a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to jump ahead and then we'll get to some more details. Okay, now that we have some more details added onto the drawing, it's not going to be a full-on illustration, but you can clearly see the full design intent for the creature. It's rather sluggish. It pulls itself along. I ended up adding another set of arms just for comedic purposes, almost like the creature's ate a huge dinner and can't move, so it's just kind of chill it. I changed some of the design for the tip of the tongue because the tongue and the bottom beak were both ending in the same direction, and I didn't want to do that, so I wanted to add a little bit of chaos in here. And plus, I think the tongue needed something. It was too boring. It was just a point at the end. Put some values in under the mouth here, and then just kind of did some maintenance surrounding the face. So might put some details in for wrinkles around here. But this is how I build up sketches for creatures. If you're using a ballpoint pen, just make sure that you build up very slowly and very lightly. And then only when you're 100% certain about specific areas, then you can get darker with the pen. There you have it, folks. Hopefully you liked this little creature sketch session today. Focal point is that eyeball right there, and a matter of fact, I think I'll darken it. Here I go again, just wanting to add in a little bit more detail. But that's the whole point of today, just adding details in, having fun with a creature sketch session. Comment below if you're a creature designer or if you want to learn, what are you working on? What are your struggles? I read all comments. I can't get to all of them, like in-depth answers, but I do read them all. So there you have it, guys. Hope today was fun. I'll see you next time. Peace.